Factors back here at Stop Logic Motorsports, and just kind of fiddling around with some stuff, doing a clutch pack before the next half of the racing season. And well, I guess technically doing a little bit of a review. A couple of things to cover today. First off, you know, I use quite a bit of Tusk products, and I've had pretty good experiences with most of them, especially their protection stuff. But I've had a mixed experience with this clutch pack. So I have the competition clutch pack and the KTM, and I put this bad boy in, let's see, bike's at 177 hours now. Put it in about 141. And after about 30 or some odd hours, I'm having problems with engagement and everything else. Basically, it's pretty well beat. And, you know, we're going to touch on that. We're going to check and see what it looks like on the inside and kind of get a feel for replacing this clutch pack. So to put things in perspective, the OEM clutch pack that I took off of this bike had just started to present problems of like problems of fade and basically symptoms of a failing clutch pack. And that original KTM OEM clutch pack was stock with the bike. The thing lasted, you know, almost 150 hours. So I mean, that's a pretty impressive amount. I mean, I've had clutch packs last longer, and I've had them last less. But, you know, 40 hours, a little under 40 hours, not such an impressive go at a clutch, in my opinion. Not super impressive. But let's put this in perspective. So I have the KTM OEM clutch pack, and after tax and charges and shipping and yada yada yada, this turned out to be about $210 worth of clutch pack. And the Tusk competition clutch, after taxes and whole 9 yards, comes out to roughly $70-ish. Yeah, that's about right. About $70. So, I mean, alright, so you could buy 3 of these clutch packs for the price of one KTM OEM pack, or you could buy, well, let's see, a Henson pack's almost $400, so you could buy almost 70, you could buy about 6 Tusk clutch packages for the cost of one Henson pack. You could buy, a lot more than that for a Recluse, which, you know, I like my Recluses on my 4-strokes, but don't really need it on the 2-stroke. But anywho, that's just my observation, you know. After 40 hours, I'm kind of unused to a clutch kind of buying the farm, if you catch my drift. Not super pleased with that, performance out of it. Now, it worked really well, and I did switch the so right here is your tensioner. Instead of changing springs like you would on a conventionally clutched Japanese dirt bike, you use this little doohickey right here to adjust your tension. 2 is your normal setting, 1 is for a lighter pull, and 3 is for a heavier bite of a pull. So just so in case you're curious about such things. But anywho, now I'm not knocking the Tusk clutch pack in general. On all of my conventionally clutched bikes, I have great experiences with it. I mean, I have some that are well over 100 hours of service. So I mean, It's just on the KTM particularly, this thing is an expensive date, so to speak. So I'm thinking this is kind of where the results may vary sort of scenario pops in. So it's kind of a two-pronged thing. It's a review of the Tusk Clutch pack, and it's also kind of a how-to video on these KTM clutches. Oof. Yeah, definitely caught a little bit of ire there. A couple of things to bear in mind when you're doing a KTM clutch pack is that you have two thin steels. They're a 1mm steel versus a 1.4mm steel. One goes against the engine, one goes against the clutch hub here. Another thing to bear in mind when you're changing these out is check to see if there's any slop in your hub. If there's slop in your hub, they have little rubber spacers here that kind of act like a cush drive, sort of. You know, like a slipper clutch or a cush drive. Judder spring, you know. Let me toss out a bunch more clutch terms, but you get the idea. And when they wear out, you'll have slop in here, and it will have a lot of the same effects as having a botched clutch. And I've definitely, also to be fair, full disclosure, the first few races of the season were all in torrential mud minus, you know, a couple. So, I mean, I have really ragged on this clutch, and truth be told, I'm not the best rider, so I've probably ragged on this clutch exhibiting a lack of skill in some instances as well. I mean, take that for what it is. I don't claim to be God's gift to riding. I claim to be somewhat competent. So anywho, one big thing you're going to need to peel off of here if you are changing this out is you'll need to find a pick or a small screwdriver, which I totally forgot to I might have to find something a bit more pick-like to pull this out with. Oh, nope, here we go. One thing to really bear in mind when you're replacing this judder spring is there's a little bit, it's really hard to tell, especially with the camera, there's a little bit of a upwards, like an upward slant. You want to place it back in the same order. You don't want to put it in upside down because your Belleville spring will not work correctly. So, let's see. You can kind of feel it. It's really hard to tell, especially with my aging eyes. But you want to have it basically slanting slightly upward. It's going to have a slight ramp to it or a lip. This is one of the big things you're going to want to look for. Alrighty, so to the meat and potatoes of this whole deal. And I'm also changing out my throw rod here, or my push rod. We have one of the thin steels. So this is what a Tusk Clutch steel looks like versus the KTM clutch steel. Don't have a lot of bluing or browning on this, but you notice there's a lot of like texture on this one. And it's definitely one of the thin steels, so that's one of our thin steels. I was a bit surprised that the KTM stuff has a little bit of finish flaws on it as well, like a little bit of rust and everything. This clutch on the surface looks like it's still in good shape, but I'm just having a ton of slipping with it. And I'm thinking one of the other things I've noticed kind of about the Tusk steels is that there's a little bit more slop on the steels. Just something that I kind of paid attention to. Actually, these look like I've put a fair amount of oomph onto these. Basically, you just peel them off and keep on keeping on. When installing your new clutch plates, it's a good idea to let them soak for a while before you undertake this. You don't really want to... oh yeah, these middle ones are starting to look a little cooked. You don't want to put them in dry because they will not swell up the friction media properly. Let's see. So we have bluing. So the clutch pack's in the middle. Oh goodness. The clutch packs that are in the middle generally have a harder go at life. They have a much harder life in the middle because it doesn't wick as much heat away. So if you see bluing on your steels, you're cooking your steels. Normally they'll start to warp, and I'm assuming that's probably what happened here. The steels are, if I had a micrometer, I could probably see if they're actually warped. But when you see this sort of bluing and discoloration, what's happening is you're pulling the temper out of the metal due to a high heat situation. So yeah, these things are, the friction pads too look like they've been well worn. So fresh, this thing had much thicker friction pads. I'm going to kind of show you the difference in the way these two are designed. Pull out my messy oily thing. So this is a Tusk competition friction pad versus the KTM. The pad surface is wider on the KTM. There's also grooves on the KTM clutch to help facilitate a better oil flow. And honestly, I don't know why they have this like texturing on here. I'm assuming that it's to also promote better oil flow as it's spinning. But it's just, slightly sterner stuff. Let's just put it that way. If I don't get 100 hours on this KTM clutch, I'm going to be greatly surprised. Alright, one other thing to bear in mind is with these KTMs that you have these locator pins. Whenever you pull these out, look for any sort of damage to them, any sort of notching. Any sort of notch that'll hang up your fingernail is large enough to constitute a problem with the operation of your clutch. Just bear that in mind. Alrighty. Alright, so we set aside our locator dowels. And we're still fishing clutch plates out of here. And the closer you get to the outside, you'll notice the less bluing. It's the ones that are in the dead center that are always under a ton of stress. Now getting this last plate out of here is always a little bit of a struggle. Come on, feller. Yeah, you got lit up there. Alright, so yeah, this poor thing's had a rough life for a $60 clutch. Alright, so I'm going to check the basket, see if we're severely notched. Yeah, this basket's a little notched, so if I were to convert to like a recluse, this is still within tolerance. These are not enough to even catch a fingernail. Try and get you a good shot. See how we have a little bit of notching? That's from the contact of the fibers against these tangs. Not to be confused with the Wu-Tang. Totally different scenario. Alright. Come on, fellers. So there's two thin steels. So notice how you have like this tiny little steel right here and this tiny little steel right here, and one of them is marked with the S. Normally you put the S marked one against the case like that. So these are 1 millimeter and these ones in the middle are 1.4 millimeters. So I'm going to take old Essie here, and we're going to toss my thinny. My thinny, that's an innie, and my thinny, that's an outie. Well, you can't really do that through a mnemonic memory tool. And the other thing is, whenever you are doing this, pull out your locator pins and kind of arrange them safely. While you're pulling out your clutches, these could fall into the engine, and trust me, they are a real pain to fish out. and you should have 6. You pull out 6, you should have 6. And then just the rest of this is actually pretty easy. Drop a friction, then a steel, and a friction, and a steel. Bloop. I'll probably have to grab my magnet on a stick to do the push rod in there. And I full on expect that I'm going to get at least 100 hours out of this clutch. So the next question you guys are probably asking, I get it actually a lot out in the wild. You know, why are you so set on keeping this 2019 carbureted bike? There's TBI and TPI out there, and you can have the latest and greatest, and boy, your bike is starting to get a little long in the tooth. Well, yeah, it's getting a little long in the tooth, but if I have a failure of battery, I can still kickstart my bike and race it. And if my e-start is on the fritz, I can still, develop a strong right foot. I like the idea of a bike that has fail-safes in it, and is a bit more simplistic. Hence why I keep the KDX 200. Now I am a little flummoxed by the bit of surface schmutz on these steels. That's probably going to wear off real quick. I guarantee you the next time I pull these out, they're probably going to look blue and wonky, but I am a little miffed at KTM for having a $200 clutch pack that is already pre-corroded. Pre-schmutzed. Alright, last thick steel. Here's another thing that's weird about KTMs. Is unlike your Japanese bikes, like my YZ in there, they start with a steel and end with a steel. And Japanese bikes start with a friction and end with a friction. This seems to like defy logic here. There's our thin pad. I don't understand the basis behind this design choice. I am not a KTM engineer. Heck, I barely understand my KTM, much less feel like I can comment on their engineering prowess. Alright, well, we're going to take a little bit of a break here. I'm going to clean up. I'm going to grab my torque wrench, and we're going to do the last little bit of this, and I'm going to put a new push rod in there just to make sure that we have any failure points addressed. If I'm doing a brand new clutch, I'll spend the extra $12 on a new push rod. It's just insurance. Alrighty, so I just wanted to double check my values here. Whoop, come on. There we go. You gotta use a little bit of a magnet for this bad boy. So we have a little bit of a divot worn on our push rod. It appears to be mostly straight. I'm going to replace it with a new one. So when I started having clutch fade issues, I went through the whole deal. I bled this thing twice, used DOT 5.1, whole hydraulic clutch. I mean, like, I was going crazy chasing my tail here. And then pretty much realized that I need to stop chasing my tail. Alright, anyways. Let's start putting this back on. So, whenever you're torquing this bad boy down, and think of it like you're putting on lug nuts. You don't want to just wrench down like crazy on your lug nuts. Oh, yeah, my, oof, goodness, how little part of this drop out. First off, make sure that all of your parts are still with us. There we go. Nice and clean. Pop you in there. And then whoop, 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 whoop. All right. So imagine, without further ado or gilding the lily, imagine that you're putting on a 6-lug wheel. Now when you're installing a new clutch pack, I always set this to adjustment number 2 because, you know, it's just the stock adjustment. If I'm going to have any issues with spring tension, and that's where I'm going to probably find it at, is by having everything all kind of wonky set up. And the other reason that you need to think of it like a lug nut is you want to do it in a crisscross pattern. Not the 1990s rap supergroup. Ooh, yeah, you were being a little tough here. And you want to set these to 6 Newton meters or 4.4 foot-pounds. Now, since I'm using an inch-pound torque wrench, why are you being a little grumpy there, screw? Oh, we do have some fouled threads on this one. Well, when I replace the hub, I need to bear some special attention to this bad boy here. Got a partially fouled screw. Now, I'm not going to let that rain on my parade today. So, alright, so we're looking for 6 Newton meters. So our Newton meter here on this inch-pound torque wrench is 6.78. So we're gonna back this bad boy off that should have us right about 6, right about here. Okay. So I know there's other videos show people just kind of tossing this back together. I like to follow the torque specifications because I'm a bit nutty like that. I am a big nerd, especially when it comes to stuff inside the engine. Basically, I'm going to sit here and feel for when it starts to have a little bit of resistance. And once we get to the point where each of these has a little bit of resistance, I'll start doing less cranks on each. So we did 1, 2. We're going to go over here. Do 3. So tighten these down. 1, 2, 3. That one, we're gonna go to this one. I'm just hand tightening as I go along too to suck up this slack. 3. 1, 2, 3. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Suck up the slack. 1, 2, 3. I know I could do this a little faster, but with these Belleville springs, I want the tension to be as close to perfectly evenly spread as possible. 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait, yeah. One, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then you. I'm gonna have a click soon. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Dang, mosquitoes are just chewing me alive. There. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Cinch it back down. Yeah, I know this is tedious, but 1, 2. Alright, we're at tension on that one. Now we're going to go back to the opposing side. Oh, goodness. We are being a little picky here. 1, 2. All right. Cinch these back up my finger since we're pretty close to tension. You. Whoop, whoop. Then we'll do one last pop of these to make sure we're all at 6 Newton meters. Alright, reverse order. Alright. There we go. It's a fresh clutch pack. So, I know I haven't been exactly complimentary of these Tusk pads and steels. I mean, for the price, for $70, you can change them 3 times as often and deal with this process 3 times as often. I don't mind wrenching on my bike, but I don't always have the time necessary to sit here and peel this thing apart all the time. So, I would say that it's probably worth it to stick with OEM. Now, if you are in a bind and you really need a clutch pack and you're between checks and, you know, the struggle is real, I get it, then it's not a terrible option, but it's not definitely the best option. It's not an option that I think I'm going to be making use of in this bike moving forward. I think I'm going to stick with just OEM because, quite frankly, I work a lot more lately, and tearing this thing back apart all the time is just not really in the cards for me. Just not a good use of my time, you know? Not a good use of my time. Well, anywho, hopefully this was helpful to you, and hopefully it also touched on a few of the things that seem to never get mentioned by really any of the other reviews or instructional videos of, you know, the thinner steels. Yeah, it's a blind spot I've noticed on quite a few reviews. Hopefully, this actually was a added benefit to you. As always, if you like the content, like and subscribe. You know what? Actually, before I just duck out of here and be like, let's not show you the finished product, I'm gonna go ahead and cut while I just do kind of the piddly parts of this reinstallation, and we're gonna fill it up with oil, and we'll see if it functions right. So instead of me being like the chef on a TV show and saying, "Here's my perfectly cooked cake," we're gonna put our money where our mouth is. So give me just a little bit. I'll see you in a few, folks. Alright, let's hope this thing isn't flooded too bad from laying on its side for a while, but let's have a little moment of truth real quick. Alright, feller. I'm guessing you're probably a little flooded. Okay. Why are we being grumpy? My Electron is a little grumpy, to be fair. So what was happening before, when I was shifting the gear, it would pop forward and stall. Get the oil worked into the clutch plates. Clutch in. Oh my goodness, like a champ. I can even get it into neutral. No way. Oh my goodness. I haven't been able to shift this thing to neutral in ages with an engine on. So, let's call this a successful venture. And hopefully you learned something. If you like the content, like and subscribe. If you don't, feel free to criticize me harshly. So take payment and attaboys, and we'll see you guys on the next video, probably on the front tire for the Neutron. And, well, you know what? I'll save the rant for the Talon rear for another video. I got other stuff going on. I can't sit here and gild the lily too long on this clutch video. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.